Good morning. Today is Thursday, June 1st, 2023. It's the first day of hurricane season, and this is the first year I've ever lived in a place where that really mattered. So we'll see how the rest of the summer goes. Today we're going to start where we left off yesterday. We're going to get into the right wing, the same stuff we did yesterday, fitting the skin, final size drilling, all of that business. I think that'll take about 3 hours. After that, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time with the plans and work slowly because we're going to get into the bits that actually turn this assembly into not just a leading edge, but a fuel tank. So there are going to be some fabricating of parts and cutting and other business. You'll see how it goes. Yeah, I really think that's it for the intro. Let's just start making an airplane. See you on the other side.
I was estimating 3 hours. It turned into 3 hours and 20 minutes, so pretty good on the guess. My advice to anybody who's doing this is start with that do the best you can to get that very first leading edge Cleco set, and then work on the top side of the skin, which is where I'm at now. Work that down to the spar. And then start on the other side, working again from the leading edge down to the spar. But that skin is so springy that no matter how well the holes are lined up in a vertical sense, or from leading edge to spar, just getting the skin pulled down, like once you're at this stage, getting it pulled down to meet that top hole is some work. You'll see me a bunch of times sort of cupping my hand over the top and pulling down with a lot of tension to try to get it in. So as I said in the previous video doing this just takes patience. That's all. I think it was like 55 minutes to skin this tank. And everything was lined up. It's just a slow process. That being said, if you didn't do a good job fluting or put any real effort into that, it'd be a much slower process. So here again, removing all of the mounting bolts to take this thing off of the wing, and we'll get into that same business of final size drilling the million holes, move the rivets, and final size drill the other million holes. Then we'll get into, of course, the countersinking, and then lastly, for this assembly, along the bottom of the skin, that's where all the screw holes will mount into those countersink, or those nut plates that we mounted weeks ago. Those holes all need to be final size drilled up to a number 19, and then if you catch it, you'll see me doing the same thing over on the leading edge, because that's where that joint plate is that joins the leading edge to the wing. And same thing there. There's some nut plates that are going to be mounted there, but all of those screw holes need to be drilled up to a number 19. So super quick process. That's not a big deal. I will say though that when you're doing it, you have basically an unsupported piece of skin hanging out there, and you're taking a pretty large drill bit to those holes. If you try to be delicate about it, you'll get a lot of chatter when the drill bit starts spinning. So just support the work with your hand. Don't put your finger behind the hole, but support it with your hand. And then when you go to upsize that hole, and it's only very slight, make sure that you have some pressure behind the drill, and just give it a quick pull, and it will bite into the material and go through nice and clean. Like I said, if you try to be delicate about it, the drill bit will want to bounce and chatter, not shatter. So while I'm finishing up here on the screen, I'll give a preview of what's happening next to kind of set it up. On the inboard, the root rib, There is an attachment bracket that needs to be fabricated out of a piece of pretty thick angle, like it's 3/16 of an inch thick, pretty heavy stuff, that will ultimately be an attached bracket for the fuselage. I'll show you the drawings coming up here in a little bit. Everything looks kind of neat and tidy in the drawings, but there's not a lot of really explicit direction as to, measurements. Excuse me. It's more generality. You're trying to match a shape, and that process took a while because I stepped away and went inside on the computer and did a little bit of looking around to try to understand what the end product was really supposed to look like or be like, or how important the fit was. So you have some parts you have to separate here. There are doubler plates that will go behind this on the other side of that rib, which you see me cleaning up here. And when you get this, they are nested inside of a ring. That's what you're cutting out of. That's what I'll be working on today, so we'll explain that later. So yeah, you have this thick piece of aluminum angle, and did I mention how much I like the $10 metal cutting blade for the bandsaw? Love that blade. I'm sort of okay with the bandsaw itself. It's a relatively inexpensive bandsaw that I purchased at Harbor Freight. And with that means that the guide is never really that accurate in terms of, making 90-degree cut. You got to use your eyeballs for that. So here's the bracket. On the left, that's the portion that will attach to the fuselage, and that flat bottom portion, that's the part that you see on the right that's going to nest up into the tip of that rib up there. We'll look at it a little bit more closely here. In the drawings, it looks like it nests really clean and tight, but it doesn't. And you're also going to get some interference once it's mounted with these two rivet holes. The flange is very, very, very close to that. So you're going to have to notch that out. All this to say that you have to finesse this piece to get it ultimately to fit the way that you need it to, still allowing clearance for those rivets or whatnot. So it's not necessarily, in the end, going to be the prettiest part, which is frustrating to me because I have a thing for symmetry. So yeah, this still ended up being, what was it, 320 for the first part of the day, and at the end of the day was 6 hours. So this was very nearly 3 hours to get these done, not including, maybe 30 or 45 minutes that I went and did some research on Verne's Air Force to learn a little bit more about making this part. In the end, it all turned out they need to be cleaned up some more before final fitting them, but they serve the purpose. It's a nice beefy bracket that will attach to that root rib and eventually to the fuselage. Let's see here. Yeah. Basically just rough cutting it on the bandsaw and then coming over to the Scotch-Brite wheel and trying to get closer to the final shape, and then fitting it, working on fitting it with the rib itself. And then once we're satisfied with that, draw out a pattern for rivet holes and drill those out. And you're drilling straight. You have to clamp it all together because on one side you have the bracket, and on the other side of the rib you have one of those doublers that I cut out. So get it all lined up with some clamps, and then drill the holes that you sort of created by looking at the drawing. There are no specific dimensions for the holes, so just use what you know at this point about what the edge distance should be. This is a 4 rivet, meaning 4/32. We'll call it an 1/8 inch rivet. edge distance, you need 1.5 times the shank diameter, and then measuring to the middle of the hole, blah, blah, blah. Basically, from the edge to the center of the hole, 1/4 inch. And then you can see I've got them all drawn out there. Yep, that's it. Basically, it'll be a much cleaner looking part. And then also there are going to be some little kind of cutouts or notches put in there to make room for the rivets and the flanges that we already showed you. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm happy with how it turned out, but it's a weird part. I'm glad to have that done and be moving on to other stuff today. So that, I would say, will bring us to the end of episode 57. Here you see the semi-finished part, and we'll continue working on that rib today. So see you in episode 58. Thanks so much. Give us a like and a subscribe.